Have you ever felt like you were drifting, like you weren't falling apart, but you weren't growing either? That kind of quiet, unspoken place where comfort becomes a cage? That's complacency. And whether you see it or not, it's just the beginning of decay. In today's episode, we're confronting the hidden enemy of the spiritual path. Not failure, not chaos, but the slow fade of staying still. If you've been feeling stuck, tired, or disconnected, this message is for you. The light doesn't stagnate, it flows, and so must you. Welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Justin, and here somewhere is my co-host, Michael.
Hey, guys.
So we're going to continue the series on the axioms of light, inspired by the book, The Light Within, A Journey Through the Axioms of Ashla. And today's axiom is decay comes from complacency, a place where we've all been from time to time. And, when we sit with it too long, Michael, it gets really, really tough to get out. So we're going to talk about that today.
I think of it like quicksand,
Yeah.
It's like you get in there, you start slowly sinking, then you start thrashing, it just drags you even further into the abyss, especially if you let it go for too long.
Start panicking, and freaking out. So let's talk about this axiom real quick. Decay is not something that's loud or explosive, right? It just kind of creeps up on us little by little by little by little until it gets, we'll use quicksand, your analogy, until it gets right here and you're like, oh, and then you start trying to freak out. It doesn't announce its arrival, even for the best of us. And most often, this is the crappy thing about decay and complacency. Most often, it creeps in through our routines and our comforts, and it's like that slow erosion of our intention.
Yeah. I like that, though, because it's so true. It's often when we get into these stagnant places in our life, it's sort of when we're in that limbo period of where we've been and where we're going. And if you allow yourself to stay in that place too long, the further that vision you had originally just drifts further and further out of your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so easy to get stuck in those ruts where all of a sudden you're just doing what you can to get by and you got no drive to do anything more than that.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind, right? But it's also that quiet unraveling of our purpose when we stop being aware and stop paying attention to what we're actually becoming. Complacency doesn't feel dangerous at first, really. In fact, it feels a lot like rest and napping, and
yeah,
everybody loves that. I love that because it feels good. It feels like peace sometimes.
Well, it's like a lot of the stuff we talk about on here. Everything's repetition. Everything's building those muscles up. Well, these emotional, spiritual, mental muscles we exercise, if we don't continuously exercise them, begin to atrophy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so easy to get yourself in a lull where you're not honing your skills. And I know there's an axiom for that.
There is.
And when you're not doing that, you're slowly losing all that progress you made. And it's a lot harder to get back to where you were after taking a couple months off.
Yeah. Now, rest is important. We talk about this. Rest is important. Moderation's important. What we're talking about today is too much rest, maybe, or just losing sight of that purpose, losing sight of those goals. And like I said, this feels like peace. It feels like rest. But unlike true rest, this complacency does not restore. It weakens, it corrodes the work that we've done. And unlike true peace, it does not align us with ourselves or with the universe or the force. It actually kind of removes us from our purpose. As you said earlier, it kind of drifts away. It removes us from our calling, from our very connection to life. So, the force flows through all things, but it flows through us. It doesn't just hang around us waiting for us to do something. In other words, it's not going to move us. We must move us, right? So, and when we stop moving, we stop seeking, we stop growing, we step out of its current.
I like to think of it as like a hole almost, right? It's we keep motion, we're not going to get dragged into the vortex because as we've talked about on here, the ego's number one goal is to keep you safe and keep things as routine as possible. When we get into a lull of complacency, we start cultivating this routine around this behavior. And when we're in that routine, the longer we stay in it, the more these things calcify and our ego becomes stuck. Where any type of momentum out of that, the deeper you get in that spiral, the more pull your ego is going to have on keeping you stuck in that same lifestyle. Because like you said, if you don't stay in the flow and keep moving forward, you will get stuck in these places where you're really going to have to do some uncomfortable things to get back to a place where you can flow in the unknown, because your ego is so afraid of that.
Yeah, because it doesn't understand it. It doesn't understand how you're trying to better yourself, which will better it. Doesn't know that, though. So I ask you, and I ask you this question also. Where in your life have you settled into this kind of stagnation? Not because it serves you, but because it spares you. Where have you stopped stretching? Or where have you stopped exercising? Where have you stopped learning, feeding your brain? Where has growth given you, or where has growth given way to repetition? And inspiration gives way to excuses. So this axiom is not a judgment. It's an invitation. When you say,
Yeah.
an invitation to awaken, to rise again, and to remember that you were not made. You were not built by whatever creator or non-creator you believe in. You were not built to stagnate. You were made to evolve, to grow. So that's what we're going to be getting into today. And that's kind of the gist of that axiom and what it's telling us.
Well said. I mean, we were just talking about in the last couple episodes we've been doing, we did one on radical acceptance and radical accountability. Again, this isn't judging yourself or calling yourself out. It's just being able to look at things with as much awareness as possible. And it can be humbling when you're really in that rut, when you're really become stagnant in life, but when you can start evaluating not only that you are stuck, but the mechanisms that are keeping you from growing, man, that's real fertilizer for growing.
Yeah, and it has to be done in truth. If it's not done in truth, it's not going to help. So let's clarify something about decay and complacency. It is not laziness. I'm not talking about lazy. We're not calling anybody lazy. It's not the same thing. In truth, it's far more deceptive than that, right?
Yeah.
So it's a false peace. It's that false stillness. It's a subtle whisper, an illusion that convinces us that we've arrived. I made it. I finally made it. Finished my quest, and that I've done enough, and I don't need to grow anymore because I did it. I did it.
Yeah.
Right? And it whispers to you, you're fine where you're at. You did a great job. You're fine where you're at. Not out of love or concern, but out of fear. It's what we were just talking about when we're talking about the ego, out of fear. When we do this, we put our souls to sleep in a way. It's like sleepwalking for the soul.
And complacency, look at bad habits. They talk about smoking. People who start smoking, they're not worried about the lung cancer, but the way it compounds over time. I mean, it's a good analogy to look at how complacency, it's, you get to that pinnacle. I have a good job. I'm able to pay my bills, live comfortably. It's like I'm married, so I don't need to exercise. These little stories we tell ourselves to not continue growth. And man, I tell you what, you ever not hit the gym for like 5 years and then go try to hit the gym again? It is like pulling teeth.
Yeah, it hurts all over again. So again, decay does not come with this crash, but with that kind of slow quiet of your dreams and your purposes and all those things left unattended. You've kind of walked away from them in a way. And it hides behind comfort. And it masks its grip on you with routines that feel safe, but offer no challenge, no kind of stretching of that vessel, those boundaries. It says, this is good enough. And when the deeper self is still restless, still reaching, still calling to evolve, and it's telling us, you're good, you're good. And complacency is that voice that tells you not to start the journal entry, or not to start stretching, or not to swim or run or whatever you need to do. It's the one that says, you don't need to apologize. You're good as you are. Do not go deeper. And it tempts you with this numbness and this repetition. Honestly, with mediocrity dressed as stability. That's what it does. And nobody plans to be mediocre. But sometimes it happens. It's happened to me before at different points. Again, I'll go back to that series I did after I broke my leg and recovered. The Road to Recovery, I think I called it. That was decay and complacency. And so for me, in that instance, it was a crash. Well, I'll say it required a crash because I have a thick head, right? It required literally breaking myself to go, wow, I've actually been in a bad place physically, especially physically. So, but it also brought up all these other things too. So, but it's mediocrity dressed as stability. because I thought I was good, and I thought I never could break a bone. Are you kidding me? Look at me. I can't break a bone.
I'm steel.
Dude, it happened, and it happened quick. Now I'm bone and titanium.
Hopefully reinforce you a bit.
You know what? We'll just go with that. It'll stay there until the screws come out on their own. Hopefully never, but
Right. So there's a quote that comes to mind as you talk, especially as you talk about how your mind, when you get into these places of stagnation, idle hands do the devil's deeds.
yeah.
And the point of this quote is when you don't have areas in your life where you're growing, expanding, your mind will turn against you. And you will start doing things to avoid that discomfort that comes from that. Most people who go into deep addiction do it out of loneliness, is what was the catalyst that got them starting.
Yeah.
And often loneliness, I mean, we can have people in our lives who separate from us, or we end up drifting apart, or just lifestyles change. But there's always invitations to grow and meet people, to experience life. And this is just one of the areas out of many where we end up stagnating and end up cultivating these inner demons that try to criticize us and try to keep us comfortable. I mean, not try to keep us comfortable, but try to make us feel not good about ourselves.
But here's something to remember as we talk about this. Stillness, inner peace, and stagnation are not the same thing. The stillness that we were talking about during the Bruce Lee show, and the inner peace that we talk about all the time, things that are brought on by, during meditation, prayer, or contemplation, that kind of stuff restores and reconnects you, aligns you, and renews you. And it brings you into that deeper alignment with the force, with the universe, God, whatever, and the present moment, right now. This spiritual stagnation, however, disconnects you. It halts your motion. It deadens your wonder and curiosity. And it really kind of dims your shine a little bit. And this is why it's dangerous, because it is comfortable and it kind of feels good until it starts to not feel good. And it requires no discipline, which is kind of nice sometimes, because no discipline means, well, I can just exist and expect myself to be good where I'm at. But you're not applying any courage, no humility, any of that stuff. So, I think I mentioned this. I don't remember what show I mentioned it on, but we were talking about kind of the true meaning of hell. And that's separation from God, right?
Yeah.
It's not all this fire and brimstone nonsense. It is separation from God, separation from the universe. And I'll tell you, a stagnant soul cannot hear the whisper of the force, and it cannot hear the whisper of God or the universe, or again, whichever you feel pulled to.
Yeah.
So
I saw this short that really hits home with this, and it was a really beautiful analogy. And they were talking about how there's so many people who are spiritually dead everywhere. And spiritually dead doesn't mean lack of religion, lack of faith. Mm-hmm. Spiritually dead is, imagine a glove, a white glove. That you put your hand in it, that glove moves, and when you take your hand out, that glove is floppy. Well, you were made in the image of God. Whatever faith you're in, you were made in the image of God. And when you are not living a life that is not of service, that is not of being of God, when you're just coming home playing video games every day or doing the bare minimal to get by, you're gonna cultivate this spiritual deadness. Like you said, I loved how you phrased it. You won't hear the force whisper to you because you drift further and further from
its rhythm.
Yeah.
And its flow. And you can do that if you want. We're encouraging you not to. But we're also talking about what a slippery slope it becomes when we kind of, okay, I don't need to be so disciplined today. I don't need to do this today. And it snowballs. It really, really does. Especially with the changes of life, like you were talking about earlier. 100%. Dude, I've been married for 23 years as of last week. Okay. And there is truth in your words, because I could stop doing certain things.
Yeah.
The choice was there. So it is so easy to fall into that. It's like, putting the frog in the cold water and heating it up, right? And it kind of slowly heats up.
Yeah.
This is what happens to you.
Perfect analogy.
And this is why complacency is one of the greatest enemies to our growth, because it pulls us away from presence, and it replaces our mindful action with autopilot. It is literally the slow death of transformation.
Well, it's like growth. I see so many people who have struggled with this. I did myself for years. You let yourself get to that point where things spiral you down. I mean, deeper the spiral, the harder it is to climb up. And I'm watching so many people I know that are in this stagnation in life where it's like, I see the steps that could be taken, but how do they even begin? Where would their first step be after so much time with that mental or emotional or social atrophy happening for so long? I mean, that's why so many people become hermits, is that social atrophy. I mean,
Yeah.
because if you don't keep working on those skills, you're going to start feeling socially awkward around others. If you don't constantly let yourself be reflected by others, the only reflection you have is your mind. And that is not the thing you want to be your guide on if you're doing good in life or not.
There's an axiom for what you're saying, too.
Yeah, there is.
It talks about withdrawing. Withdrawing for purpose, though, with purpose, with a clear goal in mind to connect, to search inside. It doesn't say we should always do it. And as you said, if we do it too much, it comes back to this whole balance thing. Stagnation and decay is not, you are completely out of balance. And
Right.
these are the things, and so this is what we ask. Where in your life have you been too comfortable? I ask myself this, especially after what happened to me when I was kind of renewed, so to speak, my purpose, my goals. And I had to ask myself, okay, where did I become too comfortable? I was eating good and everything was great. And,
Yeah.
it caused me problems. What habits, what beliefs or routines that once served me now dull me, lock me in this cage of complacency.
That's right. It's enabling yourself. I mean, that's in the end what it is. It's when you keep enabling your own bad behavior, you're doing nothing but cultivating those mental muscles that's the way to respond to anything, right? I mean,
yeah, you're right. So let's talk about how this starts internally, like everything we talk about. So decay, again, rarely announces itself in a thunderous way, in a really loud way. It doesn't scream, it whispers. And there is evidence that is produced in front of you, around you, and it's tough to see though sometimes. And by the time it's reflected in the outer world, like, man, I'm running out of breath for some reason, just walking up the street. It never happened to me before, type of thing.
Yeah.
It's already been running deep inside. At least for me, that's my experience with it. And look, think of it this way, Michael. This kind of decline doesn't begin with catastrophe. It begins with our compromises, our self-compromises. It ended in catastrophe for me, back to my example. But it started way before that, clearly.
right.
So
I like that though, because
yeah.
as you begin to enable that lifestyle, the compromises you make to keep indulging in that, they start stacking up.
So, and long before this decay is visible in our relationships, in our discipline, our health, even along our spiritual path, it first takes roots in these unseen places, as you said, in our mind. This is where we begin to lower our standards and we start making excuses, or we stop questioning. We lose curiosity. And, in the heart where this bitterness lingers and gratitude fades, it really grips us in a really, really hard way. It doesn't seem hard, but once it does, once we become aware of it, then it's like I said, using your quicksand analogy, we're up to here and we're like, oh, no.
I let this go for too long.
You let what go for too long?
Just sinking into the sand.
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, so, and in our spirit, we start to slowly disconnect from things, from our God, the universe, our higher selves, the light. And this isn't some kind of rebellion, like where we just did a 180. This is just because of that quiet neglect of our beings, our whole beings. Every choice matters. Every single choice matters. And it's these small, subtle compromises that this process begins. I'll skip this practice just once, or then that kind of leads into this doesn't really matter. And, why bother is where it kind of ends up. And then, once you get to the why bother part, it's like, oh, crap.
Yeah, you get there and all of a sudden, wait a minute. It's almost a 180 on your beliefs after that little bit of practicing it too much. I mean, we've talked about the book Atomic Habits, and it's the same concept. Atomic Habits talks about real change happens not in major life choices as far as changing your habits. It happens in the incremental shifts you can make. And doing that for habits like going to the gym, saving money, eating healthy, those are difficult habits to cultivate and practice for, 90 days and start making it a part of your standard routine.
Yeah.
But if you do things like eating junk food, staying up late, not going out when you said you would, or these little other choices, these are much easier to make those decisions. And every time you make that decision, it gets a little easier because, like you said, I mean, your values start to slip. You end up, I know I had a really rough period with my friends where in my relationship, I ended up not going out because I didn't want to deal with the drama. And slowly I just kept making excuses for it and excuses to the point I stopped making plans.
Yeah.
And I mean, that atrophy it's killer how fast that compounds.
You know, and for me, and I know this may be a little controversial for people who do cheat days, for example. I had to stop doing cheat days. I had to, because I was making these compromises, and it's like, it's cheat day. I can eat whatever I want. But then I was dealing with 3 or 4 days of suffering, basically, because just like everyone else, I'm addicted to sugar and I'm addicted to all these snacks and crap. You know what I mean? So when I was doing cheat days, it was like I was opening the floodgates and then I had to wean myself off again over and over and over again. And by the time, Fridays came around, it's like I was finally back on track. And then Friday screws it up again. And I'm not telling people not to do cheat days, because if that works for you, it does. But that's kind of an example in my life where I was making a compromise and it was causing me problems.
Well, it's like, I know, I mean, like my drinking, man, it's like I was drinking so heavy for a long period there. And then I went from that to like, you start realizing, like, I'm doing really good. And all of a sudden you realize on the weekends, like, it's the weekend, I can drink again.
Right.
And all of a sudden it's like, man, you know what? It's been a rough Monday. Like, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
I'll skip my discipline just this once. It doesn't matter. It's the weekend, bro. And then you get to the point where, you know what? Why bother quitting? I'm just going to do it in 2 days anyway.
When it's like, when you have a life where you're really doing well in life, when you're accomplishing your goals, you're in that flow, you have a lot of self-trust. So when you go to make those solid decisions, that voice inside, like you said, it'll be like, hey, is that a good idea? I don't think you should do that. But the more you don't listen to that voice and you do wherewithal, the more that voice will slowly go from talking to you to whispering to being silent. And it's that self-trust. Self-trust is not a cognitive discipline. Self-trust is something you have to do on a deep soul level. You got to show your spirit that you are willing to show up for you.
Yeah. Let's think of a tree. I want you to think of a tree, okay? How often does a tree just immediately rot and then crash to the ground? Never. It's not how trees work. It starts deep in the core of the tree. And a lot of times it actually starts in the roots, and the roots get diseased, and then it kind of goes up slowly. I mean, it could take many years for a tree to rot, depending on the humidity and blah, 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 all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
It never starts. The rot never starts with a crash, and you never see the rot most times until it does crash. So it starts in deep where we can't see. And a lot of times it's crazy. And I do this for a living, so I feel like I can talk about this a little bit. But the outer bark looks good and it's strong, especially with the trees in our forest where you're from and where I work. Those ponderosa pines. The bark is super thick. I mean, like, nothing could get in there, and the bark stays strong, and you could push on it, and it doesn't seem like there's anything wrong. But inside the tree, it's rotting. Its life force is just slowly withering away, and eventually, at some point, could be months or it could be several years, depending on how big the tree is. It just takes just a good wind one day and bam, crashes down. And then when you look at what's left of the tree, it's like, oh my God, this thing was completely rotted. And this is how it works with us, because it's slow. And because it's slow, it's not that we're really ignoring it per se. Maybe we do sometimes, but we just can't detect it's happening. And this gets us back to awareness. Awareness is the key to many doors here. Talk about awareness a lot. And the reason is because awareness is that sacred key that unlocks a lot of this stuff for us.
Well, I mean, like you're saying, how it sort of flies under the radar. I mean, when you get into that stagnation, especially if it's a slow burn happening over a period of time, you may never realize it. You may have your head so above that water looking everywhere else that you refuse to acknowledge the state of your life. And I mean, again, awareness, it is so powerful because it cuts through the crap we're constantly telling ourselves, the justifications we make for our lifestyles. It allows us to truly evaluate things from an honest and an honest and noble place where this is not who I want to be. This is not aligned with where I want to go with my life.
We must tend to all things in our whole being. And this is one of those things, if we're not tending to our soul, that garden within, it will grow weeds and it will distract you. And if you stop nourishing your purpose and you stop focusing on your goals, your passion will wither and die. And the force, the light, the truth, it's always still there, right? It's still there and on some level, but it fades. It starts to fade beneath these layers of distraction and passivity. And it becomes an external disrepair of ourselves, but it doesn't start there. And it's not just there. It's kind of that slow forgetting of why we did any of this in the first place. So let's talk about how complacency and the force fit into our teachings and our path. And for those of you out there who don't want to call it the force, then you can actually just substitute whatever, because it still applies, still works.
So my favorite's Gus, God, Universe, Spirit.
Oh, Gus. Good old Gus. What does Gus look like?
I picture him in like a nice bowler cap.
Yeah.
Sitting on a bench with cane.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
He's cool.
Yeah.
He's good people.
I can do that. Been around, seen some stuff. Yeah.
Wise but quiet. Humble.
Wise but quiet. Plays a lot of chess, I'm sure.
Yeah.
With his buddies at the park. Yeah, I can get behind that. Gus. These things, let me just put it like this. Our connection to these higher things, it's not still water. It's a river. I love using river as an analogy because it's the best thing I can think of. It flows and it moves and it pulses and it dances all through life, right? And to be in harmony with this connection, to participate in that, is to remain engaged and alive, like truly alive, seeking and evolving to something better each day. Complacency and stagnation, again, this brings us separation from our connection. And it breaks that connection in here, and then eventually it breaks it, between us and between our loved ones and everything else. And it starts to, again, rot us from the inside out. And when we cease to grow, when we cease to stop seeking growth, we cease to align. And, the force, God, universe, Gus, does not demand perfection, but it does require presence. I'm here. I'm doing my best. I am aware that this is happening. I am working to fix it. That's the kind of presence we're talking about, not perfection. It calls us to move and refine and not sit on our butts all the time.
Well, I mean, complacency is so, in my opinion, against this philosophy, this lifestyle, because even the philosophy itself is not complacent. This is ever expanding, ever evolving. It is these teachings, the things we want to build, are things that will evolve with society and with time. This isn't something that is doctrine that is set in stone. There is always room for things to grow and become more, which is at the heart of the philosophy for us as people as well. Yeah. It is to not feel you are holier than thou or above everyone else, or that you have perfected your trade. Yeah. It is that there is always room to grow. There's always new areas to learn.
Yes.
And the more I think the axiom you're referring about earlier, even in periods of rest, where we have those long stints where we need to recuperate, you get out of college and you give yourself a little downtime. That doesn't mean not to keep honing the sword, to keep growing in your knowledge and wisdom. Yes, rest. Yes, don't be as active if that's what you need right now. But don't stop yourself from expansion. Don't stop yourself from doing what's best for you.
Yeah, because when we become idle, we stop listening and we stop practicing and we stop questioning, which is the most important thing for a seeker to do, is to question everything. And we cut ourselves off. You're talking about our teachings. Our teachings, imagine them as a temple with principles and pillars. Those must remain. But through that temple is not a pond, but a stream. A nice, subtle, small stream that continuously flows. Because if we become like a pond, cut off from that flow, that stream, what happens? We become still. And not stillness, but still, not moving.
Well, it's like I've thought about this because you've referenced it a couple times. It's like as you are with the river and things are moving, often it can be good to go into a place of stillness where the water is tame and you can see the reflection clearly. But if that water stays in that calm place for too long, it starts to get murky. It starts to get foamy. It starts to get all that nastiness in there. Life is no different. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like it's important for stillness. Again, we're not talking that these things are the same thing. They're very much different. One is effective stillness, taking time to be with yourself. But when it comes to complacency, that's when you take it too far. That is where it goes from stillness to stagnation, where you lose that momentum you were having in your life for that stillness.
Yeah. Yeah. And those little spots that you're talking about along the river, that's where we swim. I grew up swimming in those because you don't swim in the river, right? You swim in those. But because it's safer, it's better to swim in there because you're not going to get carried away. But within those pools, there's still motion. It never stops moving. Think of those as those little rest spots. Yeah, we get in the river sometimes because the river's fun, but we also get into those pools and chill a little bit. So, and again, as you said, this is not a race. It's a rhythm. Doesn't matter what rhythm, but it's a rhythm. And Gus speaks to us in the present moment, nowhere else. It's where you find it. It's where your connection is in the moment. And if you're too numb or too comfortable or too disinterested to receive it, you're gonna miss the whisper. You're gonna miss the nudge, the subtle push, the tap on the shoulder. And this is why our discipline should never be merely a ritual. It is necessary for our alignment and for our growth. Your reflection, your breath, your stillness, your service, all of it is how you move with life. Here's one for you, because we've been talking a lot about vessels lately in the last several episodes.
Yeah.
And so something I want you to consider, that vessel, the vessel that does not pour spoils. That blade that does not cut, what does it do?
Goes dull.
It goes dull. It rusts. And the soul that does not continue to grow dims.
Oh, I like that. It's so true.
So you need to ask yourself, are you flowing? Are you listening? Are you growing? These are the things that we should constantly be asking ourselves, because if not, well, you're going to fall out of alignment. But look, it's never too late, right?
Right.
It's never too late. You can always return back to that place. It's going to be hard depending on how far away we drifted from our practice.
We can always get back there.
You can, because nothing's actually ever left you. It just waits for you to come back and go, okay, I'm ready to be in alignment again. But it will not carry you if you are actively choosing to stand still.
We were talking about these habits like being like muscles, right? Where there's that part of your brain, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, whereas the seat of willpower. And it's very much like a muscle. The more you do things you do not want to do, but you do them anyway to completion, the more this area of your brain expands. The more you avoid these things, the more it retracts. And so, yeah, you might have had it like this, and now it's going to take a while to get back. But if you are diligent with yourself, you're willing to work with yourself where you're at and start making those little steps, slowly we can re-expand that part of our brain and bring us right back to that wholeness you're talking about.
Yeah. So I know it's been all doom and gloom, and it's not meant to be that way, but this is important truth that we must all remember. So how do we know that complacency is set in? How do we know?
That restlessness. I know when I've gone in my stagnations, there's always been that drive in me telling me you should be doing more. You need to get out there. And every time I pushed it down, it grew into contempt for myself or my situation. And man, it was sort of like I was talking about earlier about idle hands do the devil deeds and how we can really become our worst enemies in those moments. I was my worst enemy. That complacency. I didn't want to budge from my mountaintop that I climbed to. I was content being there, and it took a gust of wind to blow me right off that hilltop.
I used to come and visit you when you were up there. I'd say, hey, Michael. Yeah, and I'd let you tell me stuff, and I would just, I wasn't going to tell you that you were fixing to get blown off the top of that mountain, but I was just making sure you're all right. At least I could still see you sitting up there. One way is something that you brought up earlier, is dismissing others, not wanting to go anywhere, not wanting to do anything, losing that drive to be with others, right? But also on the other end of that, when we start to dismiss kind of feedback from others, if they're trying to correct us, or if they're trying to kind of help us if they see that we're struggling. And, one of the surest signs of complacency is just defensiveness that is unwarranted. Just defensive about everything. You just feel like you got to be just shield. Everybody's out to get me type of stuff.
Yeah.
And if you reject coaching in the workplace, we always talk about, it's coaching, not correction. Sometimes it feels like correction, but really it's coaching. What we do is we kind of close ourselves off from people who maybe more wise than us in a certain thing or a certain moment.
No, that's such a good point, though, because, man, I've seen it, I've been through it, but there's truth to that. When you get to that place of complacency, the last thing you want to be told is, hey, you're not trying hard enough, or you're not doing enough, or I'm worried about you not being healthy, whatever
Mhm.
the realm it is. But man, I tell you what, that is when people are the most defensive.
And then, of course, repeating patterns without any kind of reflection. And we talk about rumination a lot lately because we're kind of in that realm right now. We kind of shifted into, checking in on yourself and not ruminating. I had to do that today for my favorite person. She had made a few tiny, and I mean tiny, mistakes, and the world was lost. It was over. It was Armageddon, dude. And I had to remind her, listen, okay, you made a few mistakes. Let's move on, because then she was checking in with me all day. I did the laundry. I cleaned the house. And you understand what she's trying to do, right? She's trying to make up for those small mistakes, which really affected nobody. I mean, when I say they were tiny mistakes, bro, they were tiny. So then she was checking in with me throughout the day about doing this and doing that. And I just said, okay, listen, I appreciate what you've done, but I need you to sit for a moment. And this is all, of course, I'm at work and she's here, but I need you to sit for a moment. Thank you for doing those things for me. I really appreciate it. But I want you to understand that you do not have to prove your worth or prove to me that you are worthy of my love and affection, right? Because all you need to do is exist.
Yeah.
That's all you got to do is exist. And I love you no matter what. So repeating these patterns without kind of reflecting is we fall into these loops of unconscious behavior and we're not aware. So we don't pause. We do the pause, but we're not pausing. We're not performing introspection. And that also dulls our edge. If you're a student of life, like I try to be every single day, and I know you do too, you stop learning. Without this reflection, we just survive.
Well, it's like without the awareness, we can't understand the mechanisms in which make us behave in the manners we behave. Like what you're describing with her, I have been that person. That fawn response kicks on, I mess up one small thing, and all of a sudden I feel like I have to give the world to make up for my inadequacies.
Yeah.
And I mean, until we can step back and realize, hey, this is my nervous system kicking on. It is trying to get me to do what I've known to do to keep me safe and to keep things consistent. And it's self-deprecating. It's not a bad thing. This isn't something to judge ourselves for.
No.
But it's, again, awareness. With awareness, when we get into these activated states, we can step back. And it doesn't mean even that you might still do that activated thing you do. Most likely you will if you're new to this awareness thing, especially around certain things. But as you gain that awareness, you can start creating distance between the trigger and the response.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? It helps. It helps when someone kind of reminds us that, hey, I appreciate you. But it's not because you did things for me. I appreciate you anyway. Right. So
I was reading an article today that really hit home with me, and it was talking about, for me, one of my greatest areas when I'm triggered, I love to explain myself. Even when I haven't done something wrong. Let me tell you exactly why I couldn't meet this expectation. Let me tell you exactly why I had this feeling or this thought or this opinion. And it's like, I've reading this article, it was talking about you really have to allow yourself to go into situations to get those feeling that need to explain yourself and learn to identify with it, sit with it, and not do it. And watch what happens from the conversation once you re-regulate yourself back from that. And so that's something I'm going to start practicing because I didn't really have an awareness to it till reading that article.
Yeah, we lose purpose. We feel like a loss of purpose. Or we lose the feeling of having meaning or that drive or hunger, like when you first started, you were just devoured. Same thing with me. Derek and I have had many conversations. In fact, we just had one recently where he actually said to me, man, when you first came here, I wasn't sure how you would turn out because you were just a wildfire devouring everything. And when you feel that that's lost, you may be dealing with some complacency. If you always had a lot of questions and you really applied a lot of discipline and you had this hunger, but now you kind of drifted away and you're not really thinking about it anymore and you're not really present, it's like it kind of feels bad. But again, this may be something that's happening inside you, and it's time to reflect upon that. Another one is feeling stuck.
Yeah.
You feel stuck, but you're not really willing to do what's necessary to change either.
And I think that is one of the worst limbos can be in. That is where I see being the pinnacle. When that stagnation takes you to the heart of that circle, that is exactly it. You know what's up, but at the same time, even though you know what you could do to change your life, it is an absolute refusal to get out of that comfort zone.
Yeah. And the last one that I want to talk about is resisting new learning. Resisting challenges, refusing to empty your cup, because we get to this point where I made it, high five to me, I made it, I won the race, and that's when decay starts to begin. That's where decay begins. Don't forget how literally vast our universe is, and all of the things that could exist within it. You will never stop. I mean, you might stop, but your learning will never stop if you apply yourself. These concepts are endless. There's always more to understand. There's always more to refine. There's always more to become. And, when you've made it and you get proud, overly prideful, you resist the correction. You resist the learning. You resist opening up to new things. But those who humble themselves become masters of themselves.
I think one of the greatest thing I ever learned was there's no such thing as a stupid question.
Nope.
It's like the minute you can humble yourself and stop trying to be the person who knows everything and just say, hey, I don't know. Or when someone tells you something, to be receptive to it and really take it into consideration. I mean, it's crazy how much you can expand beyond. When you're in a complacent place, the walls start coming up because you get to that inferiority mentality when you get stuck in life. And you become so hardened to new knowledge and information. So allow yourself to be open to all things. Catch yourself when you're in that place.
Yeah. I during our time together, I've told you many times, it's only dumb if you don't ask me.
Yep.
I don't care what it is. And you've asked me some great questions that you thought, oh my God, I probably shouldn't ask him this. He's going to think I'm stupid, or he's going to think that I haven't been listening or whatever. There is no dumb question. There is no dumb question. Because that's how we fine tune our relationship. If I'm teaching, I'm lecturing, I'm sermonizing to you, yeah, and you're not getting it. But if you don't ask me questions, then I don't know how to adjust and fine tune our connection, teacher-student.
Right.
Because as our axiom of light says, the student is the best teacher. And the only way to do that is to be curious and be explorative and ask those dumb questions. All right, so we would be remiss if we didn't talk about discipline a little bit today, right, with this topic. So it's often misunderstood, though, I think, to a lot of people, because they often think that it's restrictive and it's a punishment or like rigid control. But in the way of Ashla, discipline is none of those things. It's an act of devotion. It's an offering of our being, of time, focus, intention. And discipline is how we honor the truth and the light within ourselves. It's how we speak to our connection to the greater things. I'm willing to show up for you.
No, I love that you brought discipline into this because it is the number one catalyst. It is the weed eater to that lawn. And discipline is often the thing that has atrophied the most when we get into places of stagnation. And it takes discipline, again, to get back to that place we were at or beyond that.
Yeah. And the crappy part is we often have to show up with that first discipline that's really hard to get through. But wouldn't you say that discipline is often misunderstood like that? Like people just associate it with punishment, really. If you do martial arts, you're being punished if you have to stand still.
I think many people dread discipline. I know one of the reasons I was stuck in stagnation for so long was because to me, discipline was either I'm hitting the gym 5 days a week or I'm not doing it. And so I would try to push myself into these huge leaps of doing this, and then I would set myself up for failure. There's studies that show like one of the best tricks for people who have been stagnant with working out, the best way they can start to cultivate that discipline today, drive to the gym. Just drive to it. Tomorrow, walk inside. Walk around the machines, walk out. Have discipline meet you where you're at. Don't meet discipline where you think it should be at.
That is why.
That's where discipline becomes that emotional, disciplinary, do this or you're messing up.
Whipping ourselves,
Yep.
Whack, whack, whack. Like my
That was perfect.
back scratch.
That's genius.
Thing comes in handy. I love that. It's probably, listen, this is probably one of the greatest inventions of mankind. If I had nothing else, but if I had this, my back will be happy forever.
I'll have to figure out where I put it. I have the exact same back scratcher.
Do you? Very cool. Great minds, great minds.
For a minute, it looked like a ruler, though. I'm like, you're scratching here? Not a ruler, a tape measure. When I saw it at a glance, I'm like, you know what? That's an idea.
Measure your commitment.
Measure your commitment. Draw a little line where you were at today.
That's right. That's right. That's not a bad idea. Look for those markers along your path and look back ever so slightly, not just a quick glance. Oh man, I actually did make it another step. So discipline as devotion, not punishment. And this discipline we're talking about is not beating ourselves to death and into submission over and over and over, back into the cycle of rumination. It's about returning again and again to what matters most to us, to our purpose, to our goals, to those things that we want to be, to those things to that place where we're able to serve the best.
Yeah.
It's that
we're living in fulfillment, I think, is what you're going for. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, true fulfillment, though. None of this is bull crap. But it's that willingness to keep going when it's inconvenient. We're surrounded by lots of distractions all the time. And discipline helps us refocus. Discipline is how we keep that flame, that torch lit, right? Especially when we stop feeling inspired for a moment, because that happens a lot. We lose this kind of inspiration because things outside of us are not stimulating that. But again,
they talk about, like, when we get engaged, when we want to pursue this new business idea, anything in our life, we'll have these hormones to help boost us the first week or two. After that, when those hormones go away, it's up to you.
This is something that I force myself to do. Return to the foundational practices. I've been doing this for many, many, many years, and others look to me as if I've never strayed and if I've never kind of stumbled. But it's not that I haven't. It's because I return to these foundational teachings to become the student again and again and again and again. And it's, if you've kind of drifted off, I can tell you from personal experience, don't panic. Just return. Come back to those foundational things. If you've been slacking on meditation, well, then sit there for 5 minutes. Work your way back up again. If you're not being as mindful as you were, well, start small. Be mindful when you're doing the dishes. Be mindful when you're eating dinner. Be mindful when you're walking to work or walking the dog or whatever it is you're doing, and reflect as much as you can, but reflect small. Like a lot of our exercises that we share are usually very, very, they're designed to be kind of step by step, because just take a little bit at a time and go back to it and do a little more and go back to it and do even more. Start small. Just kind of go back. No matter how far you've drifted, don't worry. You can get back there easily. If you've been slacking on working out, do some light physical movement. Stretch,
Go for a walk.
And here's another one that I want to share. And I'm not going to go through all of the 12 agreements because I think you guys will get the point here. But kind of reincorporate for those of you who already are, but reincorporate the 12 agreements. Because again, they're more than ideas. They are these daily invitations. I will do this. I will do this. I will do that. And if you're unsure where to begin, just pick one, just pick one each week if you need to. Let it be your guide. Let it be a compass that returns you back to these intentions that you've been kind of slacking on. Keep the axioms alive by journaling if you need to. That works for me. I've journaled these axioms more times than I can remember now. And these axioms are not slogans, are they? They are the keys to the temple of Ashla. And the
keys to the temple of yourself.
Right. So each one unlocks a deeper level of self-awareness, as we've talked about before. Write them, reflect on them. Ask yourself, how did this axiom show up in your day? How did I respond to that? If I'm aware, build your awareness. If you're not, this journal becomes this kind of sacred record of your unfolding. It turns this wisdom that you've earned into witness. Does that make sense? So do you have anything else for today? Do you want any final words before we get into the affirmations, the journal prompt and exercise?
I brought it up a couple times on here. if there's someone who is suffering from stagnation in your life, whether it's relationships, lifestyle, career, stagnation isn't a bad thing. It's not something to beat yourself up for, as we've said on here. But meet yourself where you're at. Take it as a call to action. Evaluate what little steps, if you're not able to make your goals a reality right now, what little steps can you make in this moment to help you start walking the path to the purpose you want to live. Start small. Do not make these big, grandiose ideas of the changes you're going to make in your life if you're dealing with stagnation. But instead, learn how to cultivate that self-trust through little actionable items that you can follow through on. And be proud of yourself for doing so, because that's the other hard part. Again, we want to be here and we're starting here, and that little step's going to feel inconsequential. But if you're willing to work with yourself, to love yourself through this, then you can celebrate those little steps and watch yourself gain momentum and rise out of your situation, whatever it may be.
Well said. Thank you for that. That's well said. So our affirmations for today. And these are all a surprise for Michael because I forgot to share with him the affirmations and prompt.
Yeah, you did.
So, he's going to be surprised too. I remain devoted to growth, even when comfort calls me to sleep. Each day is an invitation to become more than I was yesterday. I welcome challenge and discomfort as both a teacher and as a student. I am alive, and where there is life, there must be movement. I find great strength in stillness, when it is rooted in awareness. I refine myself daily with discipline, devotion, and discernment. The light within me shines brighter when I act with intention. I do not fear change. I keep moving because my soul was made to grow. I honor my path by tending to it, step by step. I choose to be a vessel of the force, ever moving, ever listening, ever evolving. Our journal prompts. Where in my life have I mistaken comfort for peace? Where have I allowed routine to replace purpose? And our exercise for today. The vigil of renewal. It's a really fancy word. Fancy.
Yeah, it is.
The purpose of this exercise is to reignite that awareness and commitment through symbolic action, which leads to actual action, real action. So go to your sacred space, light your candles, set some music, whatever you do for your sacred space. Place a blank page or your journal in front of you. Write down one area of your life where you have grown complacent. That could be in your practice, your relationships, your higher learning, your self-care, whatever it may be for you. Ask yourself, what one small intentional act can I do each day to reawaken purpose in this area? Now, you're going to have to commit to this for 7 days. And each day, return to your journal and reflect briefly on how it felt, what shifted, what resistance you met. And at the end of those 7 days, return to this place and write yourself a letter and have the letter come from the perspective of a seeker of light. Talk about your renewed commitment, your awareness, your promise to not let your blade dull. And repeat this exercise as often or as needed for each area you're ready to make those commitments. And if you need more than 7 days, please take as much time as you need, because the timing is not the most important part. Getting to a place where you can commit to this practice again, right, is the most important part. So, 7 days, this is arbitrary. Take 10, take 14, take a month. It doesn't matter.
I'll be honest, I think that's my favorite exercise you've come up with.
Really?
Since we started podcasting. That was beautiful.
Thank you. It's these little things that we can do for ourselves that really make the greatest impact. I was talking to a friend today, and we were talking about, my friend had told me about this light that they received as a gift, and they decided to put it in their bathroom, just kind of somewhere situated where their bathtub is. And this light, kind of like those lights that create galaxies or whatever, on your ceiling or whatever. This one recreates like auras, like the aurora borealis or whatever.
Okay.
And it creates different versions of that in different shades. And this thing brought them so much joy because it brought them so much kind of peace, and it allowed them to kind of transport themselves to a place where they can just lay under the stars and lay under and watch this thing happen. And it was to see the joy on their face talking about this, $15 thing was so awesome. because it's the little things. And we talked about the little things, how the little things here connect us to the biggest, deepest things here. It doesn't have to be these grand gestures or these grand things. You know, I asked them a question. I said, do you remember the day or the time or the feeling, even the day you bought a big TV? You know, they couldn't remember it. Now in the moment, it's like, oh my God, I'm getting a big TV. It's gonna be so awesome. I'm gonna hook my games up. I'm gonna do all this, right? But they can't even remember. They couldn't remember the feeling or anything about that experience. But they remember every syllable, every sound, the temperature of the room when I gave them this little tiny rock. Something like this. I just gave them a little rock. And they remember that forever. Little things, right? So yes, little gestures can create grand awakenings and grand feelings and connection. So
no, that's such a beautiful analogy. Like, man, I got me a really nice TV.
mm-hmm.
I could not tell you what it was like the day I got that TV. But you know what? That one kind gesture of a friend, I can tell you all of those.
Yeah, because it's about real connection. You know, it's about true, real connection. We can't connect to a TV, right? I mean, you can try, but that will fade over time. You know, that little act of kindness that you perform for somebody or you receive from somebody, that stuff lasts forever. That stuff is carved in stone. So yeah, not sure how that relates to our topic today, but I felt like you needed to hear that. So
that was deep.
Well, that's true, right? So
yeah,
thank you so much for joining us. We really, really do appreciate it. If you could do us a huge favor, a huge solid, share this content. We don't ask you guys very often to do that, mostly because I forget to, but because I get lost in these conversations with you and with you. So, but we do thank you for showing up. We do thank you for your time. Until next time, with love and gratitude, ad lucem.
Ad lucem.